Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
She then remembered that Willow was around too. I can ask her out for a bit of fun. Shirley smiled. The sun shone upon the world, waking up the metropolis. For once, Willow woke up early. She extended her arm, but there was nothing beside her. Her eyes snapped open. Out of her concern for Jasper's old job, she was worried whenever he wasn't around. She got up and went around to find him. When she saw him doing pull-ups in the courtyard, and easily too, she heaved a sigh of relief. She stood at the doorway and watched him work out. His arms were powerful, and his core was taut. His toned and sexy back was fully exposed to her. She blushed. Willow draped a shirt over herself and went over. Noticing her coming closer, Jasper hopped down and turned around. "You're up early." Willow thought she could do pull-ups easily too, since Jasper made it look simple. She said confidently, "I want to try this." "Take me up there." "You sure?" Jasper asked. Willow didn't want to be looked down upon. She nodded. "I can do 10 pull-ups." Jasper bent over and lifted her. Willow held the bar. The moment Jasper let go, she realized she had spoken too soon about how she could do 10 pull-ups. It would be a miracle if she could even do one. She used every ounce of her strength to pull herself up, but even after she had exhausted every fiber of strength in her body, she still failed to do 1 pull-up. Jasper held back his laughter and took her back down. Her hands were already red. Concerned, he bowed his head and blew on it. "Does it hurt?" Willow looked at him. She thought he would laugh at her, but there was only love in his eyes. The acceptance she felt from him made her blush more, and she leaned closer in his embrace. She said, "I'm useless." Jasper put an arm around her waist. "You're not useless. You're awesome." Willow blinked. "How am I awesome?" "They say men conquer the world, and women conquer men. You've conquered me, so that makes you awesome." Willow chuckled and fell into his embrace. She loved this compliment. Jasper noticed she wasn't wearing a lot of layers, so he picked her up and went into the lounge. Jasper was feeling hyped up in the morning. Willow saw desire in his gaze. She breathed heavily. A night of rest later, she had gained back her stamina. She rubbed Jasper's arm. "What are you thinking?" "Take a guess," Jasper said in a raspy voice. Willow gulped. "Don't you need any rest?" "I don't have to rest if it means satisfying you." He took her upstairs. Willow complained, "Hey, don't make this my fault. You want this for yourself." Jasper silenced her with a kiss. It was already 11 when Willow woke up again. She realized they hadn't been holding back at all. Is this really all right? However, she got over it quickly. As long as we're happy, to hell with everything else. The Myers residence. It was Shirley's grandmother's abode. Shirley's grandmother was a septuagenarian with graying hair. Ever since her husband's death, the dame had been living a lonely life. Shirley's mother took the opportunity to ask Shirley to spend some time with the dame. After she woke up in the morning, Shirley took a stroll with her grandmother. They got some fresh greens on their way back, after which she watched some news in the lounge. Just when Shirley was about to change the channel, something grabbed her attention. It was the footage of a big shot receiving foreign dignitaries. The camera captured the scene clearly. He was about 6'3" and towering. There was a regal smile on his face, but that smile felt distant. Shirley rested her chin on her hand, staring at the young vice president. "I'm gonna be his bodyguard soon and move into his house. Wonder if this guy is really that hard to get along with." Her phone chimed just as her thoughts started wandering. She checked it, and it was a text telling her to report for duty. Shirley took up Imogen's identity. Once she was done with the internship, she'd let Imogen take her place and leave with no one any the wiser. Thus, she reported for duty in the afternoon. Despite the fact that she was extremely worried and had tampered with the ID beforehand, she still passed the interview with flying colors. Report for duty in 3 days, Imogen. No tardiness, and no slacking off. Follow the rules. Understood. Shirley nodded. She felt a little nervous. Still, her mental barriers were holding strong, so she could go through the motions as though things were just fine. Once she was out, Imogen called for an update. The woman heaved a sigh of relief when she heard that everything went well. I almost had a heart attack. I thought they'd see through you. Don't worry. I'm a pro. It's only for 3 months. You can get an actual job after that. Then, you can ask to be assigned to another city. You don't have to stay in Averna. Thanks, Shirley. Don't mention it. Just rest up. I'll deal with everything here. Shirley came out of the side door and was about to get to the car park, but a big motorcade made an unwelcome appearance. She quickly tucked her phone back into her bag, straightened her posture, and bowed at the motorcade. The motorcade stopped before the front door. A bodyguard opened the car door in the center, and a mature, captivating man walked out. Shirley's heart skipped a beat. She didn't expect to see her boss on the first day of her internship, the vice president, Zacharias Flintstone. This man was the talk of the town and the center of many nations' attention. He had recently switched up and improved his security. That was why he had picked some bodyguards from Shirley's father's base. Even though he was quite a distance away from her, she could still feel the intense aura wafting off this guy. He turned around to say something to his men, so he inadvertently faced her direction. Since she had been staring at him all the time, the guy even spared a cursory glance at her. One look was all it took for her to feel suffocated. His eyes were dark yet captivating. It was as if a dangerous soul was housed within him. Shirley quickly looked down. Please let me pass the internship safely. I just want to get this job for my friend. So, she waited until Zacharias had gone inside before she went to her car. Even though she was already in her car, she was still thinking about the look Zacharias gave her. I should stay away from him. It will be disastrous if he learns that I'm impersonating someone else for the internship. Also, his political stance is vastly different from my great-uncle's. It wouldn't be an understatement to say that he doesn't like my family. It would be bad if the guy caught any dirt on her. While she still had a couple of days off left, she asked Willow out for a meal. Willow readily agreed. Soon, she made her way to the restaurant and saw her friend. Shirley was in a beige suit and a pair of jeans. She looked as lively and as fashionable as ever. Frankly, Willow couldn't believe this girl was the same one who fought off 3 opponents in the training field last time. Shirley greeted happily, order whatever you want, Willow. It's my treat. Willow quickly said, no, it's mine. Order anything you want. Shirley rested her chin on her hand. Sure. Thanks for the meal. She didn't tell Willow that she came for work. That secret was only privy to Imogen and herself. Willow informed her that she was in the midst of making arrangements for her wedding. Even though they were the same age, Willow had a far more worldly view of life. She grew up overseas, while Shirley stayed in the base with her parents. Therefore, even though she would follow some teams to foreign countries, she was still a bit more inexperienced compared to Willow. I am looking forward to your wedding, Willow. Stay sweet with Jasper. What about Cole? No more news about him? Willow asked. Shirley looked out the window, dejected. Then, she nodded. I miss him, but we don't have that much freedom. You know how it is with the rules chaining us down and such. Don't look so down, Shirley. You're young. You're not in any hurry, consoled Willow. Shirley thought Willow had made a good point. She didn't even have a job. She couldn't afford to stumble into any relationship at the moment. Even though her father was a successful man, his achievements were not hers. Besides, she couldn't live under her father's wing forever. So, she needed to strive for a path of glory that was just hers and hers alone. The ladies finished their meal and went shopping. Shirley took Willow back to Willow's place in the evening. Come inside, Shirley. Shirley smiled. No. You should spend more quality time with your darling Jasper. See you. She drove off without a backward glance. Willow sent her off with a smile. The door behind her swung open, making her jump. Before she could exclaim in surprise, Jasper stepped out. She blinked at him, surprised. How'd you know that I was home? Jasper said quietly, I took a guess. Willow didn't believe him at all. She then remembered she was wearing the necklace he had given her. He could track her location at all times through this nifty little thing. She couldn't deny that it made her feel safe. It had been a few hours since their brief separation, yet Willow missed him terribly. So, she held his arm. Let's go. I bought you some clothes. Jasper noticed a dozen bags of clothes strewn across the ground. He quietly picked them up without any prompting as he wrapped an arm around Willow. Then, they went inside hand in hand. When they made it to the lounge, Willow started displaying everything she bought for him. Coupled with her fashion sense and his perfect body, all the clothes she purchased were just right. Unfortunately, he couldn't find it in himself to like all of them as some of the colors were a bit too much. He gingerly picked up a set of pajamas with cartoons printed on it and shot a deadpan stare at her. She merely smiled and hugged him. Oh, don't give me that look. No one else but me is going to lay eyes on you wearing that. Jasper nodded and kissed her. Sure. Just for your eyes. You'd look better if you're not wearing anything, though, Willow teased. Jasper asked seriously, are you sure? She laughed. Nope, of course not. I'll stay naked at home starting tomorrow, then, he said. He was happy to oblige such a simple request. She quickly covered his mouth before he could suggest any other wild notions. No, that was a joke. She hastily changed the subject, saying, I'm thirsty, Jasper. I need some milk. He answered dutifully. I'll get it for you. He walked away, but then he turned around. Which kind of milk, though? Although she knew he was only joking, she still put on a stern face as she put her hands on her hips. Not yours, that's for sure. He chuckled and took a carton of milk for her. She happily took it and gulped some down. While she was enjoying her drink, he started to sort out the clothes like a good house husband. They had an appointment that night. Jared and Ellen asked them out for dinner. Therefore, they started discussing the plans for the wedding. They were near in age, so they understood what the new couple needed. Willow and Ellen were talking about which gown to choose. Ellen told her about a designer brand, and Willow was interested. However, she shook her head in disappointment. I'm afraid that's not going to happen. I made some inquiries, and the designer's schedule is packed for 5 years. I can't get any slots. Jasper made a mental note of the brand. It seemed that she desperately wanted a wedding gown from this particular brand. He would do anything to satisfy her wishes. After dinner, everyone went back to their homes. Back at their home, Willow held Jasper's arm. Let's go around town. On your bike, that is. He nodded as he had been feeling rather bored staying home all this time. Hence, they went onto his bike and rode across the streets of the town. She was seated behind him, and her arms were around his waist. She leaned on his back as she stared at the brightly lit city. Although it wasn't a view that was unfamiliar to her, the scenery seemed exceptionally beautiful at this very moment. It was a kind of feeling driving in a car couldn't provide. Every time Jasper stepped on the brakes, Willow would slam into his back, causing a smile to appear on the corner of his lips. After a while, she couldn't help but wonder whether he was stepping the brakes on purpose. Eventually, they stopped in front of a hotel. "So," she said, "let's stay in the hotel tonight. I booked a room for myself. We can have it for the night." He wasn't surprised she had a place to stay everywhere. He nodded. "Sure. We'll go with your plan." She looked at him sheepishly. "But there's one thing I don't have here." She refused to go to the convenience store with him and purchase a pack of condoms. Therefore, she urged, "You're buying that yourself. I'll be waiting in the lobby." Of course, Jasper knew what she was implying. He replied, "Sure. Wait for me. I'll be back right away." She sauntered into the lobby. This hotel belonged to the Mansons. The manager eagerly served the young miss of the Presgraves the moment she came in. 10 minutes later, a tall, handsome man came into the lobby. The receptionist's eyes shone, and they stared at the man with unblinking eyes. When they saw him approaching Willow, they got a little envious. Could he be Miss Presgrave's boyfriend? She has a good eye for men. Willow said something to the manager, and then she led Jasper to the elevator. They came to Willow's room eventually. The waitstaff would clean this place every day, and they would dry clean the clothes she left here from time to time. There was a lack of men's clothing here, so Jasper had to make do with a robe. "I'll keep a few sets of your clothes here next time," said Willow. Jasper uncapped a bottle of water and handed it to her. "Have some water." She took it and drank from it. Love was in the details, after all. His love was all for her. He took care of her like she was a priceless treasure. He would know if she was thirsty, cold, or hungry. In fact, she had no doubt that he would do anything to keep her comfortable. Once she was done, she gave the bottle back to him. "You have some, too." He heartily drank the water. In the meantime, she figured it would be best to take a shower now. Just then, he rasped, "Wanna do it together?" She could feel herself flushing crimson. "You mean to say, get in the bathtub together?" He quirked his lips into a smile. "That works, too." She murmured bashfully, "Just the shower will do." "Help me wash my hair." Jasper was more than happy to help. Willow pushed him. "You go ahead. I'll come in later." So, he went into the bathroom without further ado. She could hear water sloshing around, causing her to hesitate for a moment. Nevertheless, she mustered up her courage. "We've gone all the way anyway. There's no need for me to feel shy. We're going to do something really happy." She went into the bathroom. He had already washed his hair, so his hair was drenched. The light was shining upon his V-shaped body and taut muscles. Even though she'd just had some water, her throat felt dry. Before she could even react, he had pulled her into his embrace. Soon, they stood under the flowing water. The water almost choked her. The curtain of water parted, and she could feel sweet oxygen pouring into her lungs once more. She gulped some air and noticed that Jasper had leaned down to part the water. Then, he held her chin and leaned in for a kiss. Her nerves felt electrified by his touch. Her head was woozy. It felt like she was encased in a globe of water as she dazedly wrapped her arms around his neck, responding to his kiss. He wanted to see her reaction, so he pulled back after some time. Willow panted against his lips. She wanted to say something, but his tongue slithered into her mouth before she could voice her thoughts. The gentle kiss stirred something up within her. By the time he was done with her, she had no strength left. So, he started shampooing her hair. She could feel his slender fingers gently rubbing her scalp. Even though his actions were far from arousing, she could still feel her heart race and her face turning red from the intimacy. The overwhelming love surrounding her was an intoxicating mix indeed. Once Willow was clean, they came out of the shower. She didn't need to do anything else as Jasper had changed into a robe, and he was blow-drying her hair. She closed her eyes as she enjoyed the moment. It was late by the time everything was done. So, she snuggled under the covers as he cleaned up the lounge. He only got into bed the moment everything was all tidied up. He hugged her through the blanket before raising her chin. He peppered kisses all over her face, causing an electrifying feeling to break through her wooziness. It was to be a hot and heavy night once more. Dawn had just broken through the horizon, but Shirley was already training outside. It was her first day reporting for duty. She set off at 7 a.m. to report for duty at the security guards area. When she was there, she immediately got her uniform, work ID, and all kinds of equipment in short order. Then, she was assigned a dorm. The dorm was about 2,000 yards away from Zacharias' place. Her internship would involve protecting Zacharias while he was at home. She would only be allowed to follow him out if she received any orders from her employer. Shirley was more than happy with that arrangement. Once she was done with the internship, she could leave. The reason she insisted on helping Imogen was because their friendship ran deep. She was hurt during their training once, and Imogen abandoned her task just to help her. Imogen was severely criticized and had her points deducted because of that. She had always felt guilty because of that. So, when Imogen asked her for help, she agreed without even a second thought. She had a favor to return, after all. Roll call, Imogen, someone called Shirley. Shirley didn't realize they were calling her. It wasn't until she was stared at that she took a deep breath. Right away. Once the person was gone, she heaved a sigh. I have to get used to the fact that I'm Imogen now. I can't space out all the time. Shirley went down for the roll call. She was subjected to nearly 2 hours of a lecture regarding rules and regulations before it was time for task delegation. Suddenly, she realized that there were only 2 female bodyguards this time. After everyone was assigned to their posts, the ladies still had no tasks to speak of. Shirley wondered why. The captain dismissed everyone, but he asked the ladies to stay behind. Imogen, Corinne, your task is a bit different. You'll not be standing sentry. Instead, you'll be assigned as Secret Service agents who serve the Vice President in his abode. Since things are complicated at the moment, we cannot trust any outside hires. We'll need you to act as the Vice President's maid. Your job involves everything about housekeeping. Shirley's eyes went wide. What? That's the thing I'm most worried about. She just wanted to coast through her internship and stay away from that guy as far as possible. But now I have to work near him? Of course, Captain. We will not let you down. We'll take care of the Vice President. She had to voice her assent as well. We'll do our job. Good. It's a trying time. Stay on guard and make sure the Vice President is well protected. He will be leaving after 10 a.m. You can then make your way there and get used to the place. I'll text you the contents of your work and the Vice President's schedule later. Yes, sir. Corinne and Shirley stood up straightened. Once the captain was gone, Shirley turned around. Hi, I'm Imogen Young. Corinne smiled. I'm Corinne Cleaver. Unlike you, my family got me this spot. I'm not hired. Shirley paused for a moment. She could see the obvious look of superiority on Corinne's face. Nonetheless, she kept a smile on her face. I see. Let's get along, then. I'll have to make something clear, Imogen. You might have to work a little harder. I'm not that good at housekeeping, so you'll have to bear with me. Shirley kept smiling. Then, you should have told the captain and have him switch someone else in. No can do. Do you have any idea how important this chance is for me? Don't do anything stupid either. Otherwise, I can't promise if you can pass your internship. Corinne flung her hair back haughtily and left. Shirley heaved a sigh. Why am I even here? So that girl can order me around? She didn't mind Zacharias ordering her around because he was the vice president. However, she drew the line at Corinne. There was no way she was going to take this lying down. She was beyond annoyed because that girl not only dared to order her around, but the woman also threatened Imogen's job. If this was just Shirley's mission, she could ask to be assigned away. Unfortunately, she was representing Imogen at the moment. Hence, she couldn't afford to leave. She had to finish her internship carefully. She could already see how nightmarish her life would be because of this girl. Alas, she had no choice but to deal with it. Regardless, she didn't let this spoil her mood as she was then reminded of Cole. Soon enough, courage welled within her. During the 3 months of training, Cole was like a ball of strength that kept pushing her onward, motivating her growth. Whenever she ran into any hardship, she would be reminded of Cole's words. After Shirley came back to the dorm, the captain texted her everything she had to do. As expected, they were all housekeeping tasks. She could feel the pressure and dismay piling on her shoulders. She didn't know how to housekeep at all. Then, she promptly received Zacharias' week's worth of schedule and itinerary. She was surprised to find out he had a set schedule for himself even at home after skimming through it. He takes care of a lot of stuff every day. His hours at home were either spent working or going through files in the study. Even his rest hours were compressed to 6 hours every day. He's a super pro. Shirley was impressed by his dedication. Corinne then came to her. The ridiculous woman had divided all the chores between them. Everything related to serving Zacharias was taken up by her, while everything unrelated to Zacharias was unceremoniously tossed to Shirley. For example, Corinne would be making tea and drinks for Zacharias as well as cleaning his room and the study. Shirley would be cleaning everywhere else but the places Corinne took up. She would also have to do the dishes and laundry. I have taken up courses regarding cooking and nutrition. So, I will be cooking for him as well. Only cooking. You'll be cleaning up after me, said Corinne. Shirley was miffed. Nevertheless, she feigned a placid smile as she replied, fine by me. And one more thing. Just because you're working in the vice president's house and seeing him all the time doesn't mean he'll like you. Give it up. That will not happen, said Corinne sternly. That's something you should say to yourself, Shirley thought. I don't have any ideas about him. Don't worry. I have someone I like. I won't get any ideas about the vice president, said Shirley coolly. Corinne chortled. You better be. Also, don't you poke your nose into my business. Shirley nodded. I can do that. Before Corinne took her leave, she gazed at Shirley for a while. Then, she turned around and departed. Shirley felt a little nervous after getting stared at. Did she find me out? She picked up her laptop and looked into Corinne's background. Once she was done checking her background, Shirley understood why Corinne was such a powerful diva. Her family is powerful enough for her to put on this diva act even in a place like this. Shirley put the laptop down and let out a weary sigh. I'll be walking on thin ice after this, then. I have to do my best and finish my internship. The moment the clock struck 10 o'clock a.m., Shirley and Corinne went into Zacharias' abode. It was an old house that was refurbished. The place looked like a fusion of modernity and the old times. The retro walls and murals glittered like stars under the illumination of the crystal lights. We should clean the place before he comes back. I'll do his bedroom and the study while you do everywhere else, Corinne said imperiously. Shirley nodded. Sure. Let's begin, then. Corinne went upstairs. Shirley found the tool shed in the backyard and took the cleaning tools out. Then, she came to the lounge and looked at the house around her. There was resignation in her heart. Still, her captain was right. Zacharias taking over as vice president was controversial, and it exposed danger to him. Protection and security were imperative for him. Every single person assigned to him had to be on full alert. No one could bear the consequences should anything happen to him. So, she forcefully cheered herself up and started cleaning. Since she had enough stamina, cleaning wasn't hard work for her. She started from the top floor and worked her way down. When she went past the master bedroom, she could hear Corinne cleaning up inside. Shirley cleaned meticulously for an hour. Soon, she was already on the second floor. She sat before the banister and cleaned a wooden sculpture. Unfortunately for her, it was small and smooth. So, when she wiped it just a little bit harder, the sculpture flew out of her hand. It was then that the front door swung open, and in came a tall, regal figure. The sculpture promptly hit his head. Shirley was shocked, and her heart sank. She ran down the stairs and quickly approached the man. She blurted in worry, "Are you all right, Mr. Flintstone?" Zacharias had a flinty look on his face. His eyes were as cold as ice, and he was staring at Shirley in frustration. "Who are you?" Zacharias frowned. The look in his eyes was imposing. Shirley hung her head low. "I'm sorry. I'm your new servant." She'd only been so submissive to one person all her life. Not even her great-uncle, the president himself, could make her bow. "I think you're more like an assassin." Zacharias harumphed in displeasure. Shirley quickly picked up the item. "Mr. Flintstone, do you think this thing can kill you?" "I don't mind apologizing, but I won't accept slander. It was just a little sculpture, and she only lost grip because it was too small." "And he says I'm trying to assassinate him? I have to prove I am not." Zacharias didn't expect a little servant to be so bold as to argue with him. They might not be the feudal era anymore, but he was still surprised by her retort. Corinne, who heard the commotion, quickly came down and approached Zacharias. "Welcome home, Mr. Flintstone. You're probably tired. I'll make you tea." Zacharias looked at Corinne coolly, then stared at Shirley. "You make the tea." "Sir, we have divided our work." "I'm the one taking up the job of making tea," argued Corinne. Zacharias shot her a look. "I'm the one dividing the work in my abode." Corinne winced and nodded in acceptance. "Of course, sir." Shirley hung her head low, but she felt a sharp stare piercing her for a few seconds. He shook his coat off and tossed it at Shirley. She deftly took it, and he rolled his sleeves up. Then, he said, "Take the tea to my study." Once he had gone upstairs, Corinne glared at Shirley. She whispered hotly, "I've warned you not to take my job." Shirley really wanted to swear that she was not guilty right then and there. She didn't want to do any extra work either. Instead, she smoothed out his coat and hung it on the hanger. Finally, she reluctantly went to the kitchen to make Zacharias tea. Zacharias' preferences were included in the file their captain sent them. The kind of tea he liked, how many times the leaves had to be washed, and how heavy or light he wanted his tea. Shirley finished making tea and took it upstairs. She saw Corinne standing downstairs, staring at her enviously. Shirley wondered what was there to be envied. It's just serving him tea. There's nothing to envy. Just a few moments ago, her guess that he was hard to get along with was confirmed. It felt like she was in the company of a beast. She went into the study and saw Zacharias seated on the settee before the floor-to-roof window. He was scrolling through an iPad. She quietly approached him and placed the tea on the desk. Then, she asked, "Mr. Flintstone, does it hurt? Should I put some oil on it?" Zacharias didn't look up. His eyelashes were shining under the sun, covering his eyes. His features were handsome. He would always come out looking dashing, thanks to his good looks, no matter how the reporters took his pictures. "No," he said coolly. She nodded and was about to leave. "Who came into my study just now?" he demanded. That shocked her. "Wait, why? Did he lose a file or something? I can't sell Corinne out. First, I have to settle the matter. Did you lose anything, sir?" He finally raised his head, but his eyes were like two little abysses, hiding his thoughts behind a black hole. "Do not touch anything in this room. Just dust things off," he said in frustration. He obviously did not like anyone touching his stuff. "Yes, sir." She nodded quickly. "What is your name?" He narrowed his eyes. "Imogen." "Imogen Young, sir," she answered. "And the other one?" "Corinne Cleaver." "We will be in charge of housekeeping," she replied. He nodded. "Leave." She came out of the study. Corinne was downstairs, waiting for her. Then, as calmly as she could, she said, "Corinne, Mr. Flintstone told me that next time you clean his study, just dust the things off. Do not touch anything." Corinne frowned. "You ratted me out?" "No. I solved the problem," she answered. Corinne didn't believe her at all as she huffed in disdain. "Not bad, wench. Left a deep first impression on the vice president. Unfortunately, with your family's power, you'll be nothing more than an intern. We're both interns here. We're equals. Don't give me that show of superiority." Shirley frowned. Corinne checked the time. "I'll have to make lunch for the vice president. Off you go." Shirley went back to her cleaning job. She cleaned the vicinity, including the courtyard. She was serious when it came to work. Zacharias stood before the French window on the second floor. He was holding his cup of tea as he watched Shirley sweep the courtyard. Then, he noticed she was getting ready to sprint, and he frowned. He wondered what she was going to do. Honestly, she wasn't going to do anything. She just saw a plastic bag hanging from a tree's branch, and it was sticking out like a sore thumb. However, she had no tools to take it down, so she decided to take it down herself. Since it was hanging from the end of the branch, it would take skills to take it down. She did a perfect sprint, leaped onto the trunk, and then she used the momentum to leap higher until she could catch the plastic bag. 1 moment later, she jumped back down and rolled around. It was only a few seconds, but it showcased her superb skills. He was surprised. He didn't expect a regular lady like her to possess this level of skill. Shirley chucked the plastic bag into the bin she lugged around with her. Then, she continued sweeping the ground. She felt her headband getting loose, so she took it off. A gust of breeze blew across the courtyard, and her hair fluttered in the wind. The sun shone upon her face, lending her even more beauty and life than she already had. Zacharias narrowed his eyes and commented inwardly, "Not just a regular girl, I see." He then realized he had wasted time commenting on a girl and heaved a frustrated sigh. So, he turned around and picked up the new file to go through it. Afternoon came. Corinne made a 5-course meal that looked delicious. When Shirley came back from work, she gulped. "Smells nice," she said. "It's not for you," Corinne answered snidely. Shirley said nothing more. Corinne said, "I'll tell the vice president it's time for lunch." Not long after Corinne went upstairs, Zacharias came down. He was wearing a shirt, a vest, and a pair of pants. The attire made him look taller than he already was, and the man was already 6'3". Even though Shirley was 5'6", she looked short before him. "Lunch is ready, sir. Enjoy." "We'll be back in a moment," said Corinne. She hoped her cooking would be praised. Zacharias looked at the food, but he said nothing. Corinne waited for a while but didn't get the compliment she wanted to hear. In the end, she felt dejected by his lack of response. Zacharias said, I only need one of you around. I prefer a quiet place. Corinne thought Zacharias wanted her to stay since she was pretty, capable, and a good cook. He turned around and swept his gaze across the ladies. When he laid his eyes on Shirley, she got nervous. She really didn't want to stay. When he looked at Corinne, there was anticipation in her eyes. Corinne wanted to stay. In the end, he turned back to Shirley and pointed at her. You're staying. Shirley waved her hands quickly. No, Mr. Flintstone. I can't cook. Let Corinne stay. This is an order, and it's final, he said sternly. Even though Shirley recommended her, Corinne still harbored resentment for her. She thought Shirley was only acting. I know you want to stay with him. Corinne didn't want to leave either. Let me stay, Mr. Flintstone. I promise I won't be a bother. It wasn't every day she could stay close to a man like him. No. You may return to your dorm now, he said with a tone of finality. Corinne really wanted to stay, but she couldn't defy Zacharias. So, she glared at Shirley furtively before she left. Shirley felt resigned as well. She wanted to leave, but was forced to stay. Her emotions were the total opposite of Corinne's. After Corinne left, Zacharias said, Imogen, have lunch with me. Shirley waved her hands. No. Our captain has already prepared food for us. Give me half an hour. I'll be back after I'm done eating. There's a lot of food here. I can't finish them by myself, said Zacharias. She couldn't help but think that he had a point. It was true that he couldn't finish a whole feast by himself. Besides, she couldn't exactly refuse since he was the one extending the invite. Of course. Thus, she went into the kitchen to get her plate and cutlery. He was already digging into his meal by the time she returned. So, she took some food and piled it on her plate as well. He looked at her, slightly surprised. He thought she would restrain herself. So, he was rather astonished that she didn't even bother. In fact, she showed no hint of fear either. Corinne was about to leave, but abruptly remembered she left her phone in the house. This was her important tool of communication. She had to go back and retrieve it. Yet, when she came back to the lounge's doorway, she was met with a scene that angered her. That scheming harpy is sitting with the vice president and eating the food I made for him? Corinne had her own opinions, but at this moment, she couldn't say anything. She observed for a moment and saw that Imogen was eating so naturally. She was completely unrestrained in front of Zacharias. Corinne couldn't help but wonder where Imogen got the courage. Even she couldn't stay this calm. Just standing next to someone like Zacharias was already intimidating, let alone having a meal with him. Corinne still didn't dare to go back for her phone as she was afraid of disrupting Zacharias' meal. She decided she would go back home to get her other phone. Shirley ate quietly. When Zacharias looked at her, she calmly took a bite of her food. She even reminded him, this dish is a bit spicy. Mr. Flintstone, can you handle spicy food? He replied, I can. Shirley smiled, turned around to get a bowl, and served a bowl of soup for the man next to her. Don't forget to drink soup after the meal. He was speechless. Was this her home or his home? After drinking 2 spoonfuls of soup, Zacharias said, I'm done. You can clean up. Upon seeing that the man hadn't eaten much, Shirley immediately sensed something his stomach was not easy to please. Bring a cup of coffee up in 10 minutes, the man said as he got up from the table. Okay, Mr. Flintstone, Shirley replied immediately. Zacharias went upstairs, and she quickly cleared the table of food and dishes. She first took them to the sink and then went to the coffee machine to make coffee for him. Shirley was experienced in this regard because she liked making coffee for her mother. She made a cup for the man according to her mother's preferences out of habit. 3 parts sugar and 3 parts milk. Shirley carried the tray with the coffee upstairs. She tried to slow down her steps as she reached the study door. She knocked, and just as she pushed the door open, she heard a loud voice. "If you cause trouble for me again, I'll make sure you undergo a proper reform." She was startled. Her hand trembled, and it almost tipped the tray. Luckily, she reacted quickly. She stood somewhat awkwardly at the door while looking at the man by the floor-to-ceiling window scolding someone. "Don't talk about our relationship to the outside world, and don't use my identity." The low voice carried authority and annoyance. "Just you wait." The man, who was still very irritated, hung up the phone. After turning around, he saw the girl behind him with the coffee. He said in a deep voice, "Put the coffee down and do something for me." Shirley immediately placed the coffee on the table, held the tray with both hands, and was ready to take orders. "Mr. Flintstone, please go on." "Go to the downtown police station and bail someone out for me." "His name is Tony Flintstone," Zacharias said before adding, "Bring him back to me." Shirley nodded. "Okay. Understood." She closed the door and left while thinking to herself that since they shared the same family name, Tony was probably his younger relative, and he must have caused some trouble. It seemed there was a pile of family matters to deal with, even in the vice president's home. Shirley called the captain and mentioned this matter to him separately. The captain arranged for a car to be sent for her use. Shirley then drove toward the city center. Half an hour later, after signing the bail contract and paying the bail at the police station, a handsome young man was let out. However, he already had a bruised and swollen face at this point. Tony looked at the person who bailed him out, and his not-so-disciplined eyes lit up with surprise. He didn't expect that his uncle would send a beautiful young girl to pick him up this time. She looked good, and her figure was just his type. He speculated that she must be his uncle's personal bodyguard. "Tony, let's go." Shirley called out his name. Tony followed her into the car. His eyes were fixed on her as he reached out his hand. "Let me introduce myself. I'm Tony Flintstone. How should I address you, pretty lady? I am here to pick you up on Mr. Flintstone's orders. There's no need for introductions." After saying this, she drove away smoothly.
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.